Well, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about the Nexus Pro. In fact, I talk quite a bit, so if you want to skip all my rambling and go straight to the firing and my final thoughts, you're going to want to skip ahead like 25 minutes. It's okay. I know who you are. I won't be offended. I do this sometimes myself. This box is empty. I have had my Nexus Pro for a month now, and 1 week of that was spent getting married and going on my honeymoon. So I haven't had total time to just sit here and play with this, but I have had the majority of that time. And it now looks like this. So one of the things you may notice the difference is there is a sling on it. And the reason why there is a sling on it is because I went to foamblast.com and purchased this Picatinny sling mount. And I like it a lot, and it was rather inexpensive. You can get anything you want to put on these Picatinny rails. But that was only, I think, $4. So you also notice the front end is different. This is a pressure fit piece I made to cover the worker scar barrel. I didn't need to twist it like that to take it off. It just feels cool. What this actually is a plunger tube that I found another piece of plastic pipe. I had to do a little bit of sanding and dremeling. And then I glued a few pieces of EVA foam on the inside of this to make it snug fitting so I can cover up the scar barrel. Now, this was a plunger tube from a Firestrike? No, Night Finder. I believe this is from a Night Finder. But you can use whatever you want. I just painted it black, clipped off the pieces, sanded it, done. And this worker scar barrel, if you're not familiar with a scar barrel, it has these grooves in here, which, much like the barrel of a real firearm, puts a spin on your dart. It is probably kind of debatable, but I feel like it does improve accuracy, especially if you are using worker half-length darts and your half-length mags. I have had some problems with these, so I wouldn't so much recommend that you purchase these to specifically fire from this, but it's a somewhat common dart. So if you already have a bunch of these lying around and you don't have a bunch of the new Adventure Force half-length Pro darts, you're going to want to be able to fire these. And some of the problems I've had with these worker darts are as follows. One is that the FPS is not super consistent. However, it's really consistent whenever I'm either using the Pro darts or even the waffle heads. They don't hit as high of FPS, but they do work. But one of my main issues with this, aside from the fluctuating FPS, which just has to do with like quality standards, some darts are a little better than others, and some of these are a bit worn too. I have several boxes of these, and I've literally loaded up every box into every worker magazine, half-length magazine that I have, and fired them all off. And I just get pretty varying results. But my other issue with the worker darts was the accuracy. I want to say this was $8 from Foam Blast, so that's not a lot. And this was specifically made for the worker scar barrel to fit in it, although other brands' scar barrels will fit as well, and of course you can 3D print your own. If I'm outside in a public space, the silhouette and side profile of this is very much like an AR-15 or some other type of real steel. So I don't want anybody calling the police or, a random armed citizen shooting me because they think I have a firearm. So if I wanted to use this in an outdoor open space where there's a long draw distance between me and the opposing players, I would probably want to use my scar barrel, and I would want to not have this on it. There it's all orange, not so bad. And if I was super worried, I would remove that even altogether and just put the original one back on it. Now, one of the drawbacks to this system that I have is that this, you cannot fire a mega dart. So if you haven't seen the videos, I'll just show you real quick here. This can pressure fit a mega dart. You push it to the tips about there, and then just fire it. If you have megas that are shield busters for your game types and you have to carry a second mega blaster, well, if you don't want to and you don't mind breech loading a single shot, you can discard that and just use this to break shields, which is pretty cool. But once this is on, you can't so much do that. However, if I do happen to have just the scar barrel itself on, I can always just take, say this is primed. Once it's primed, it's locked. There is a release button, but you can't deprime it. So if you don't want to dry fire your blaster and you have a scar on, all you really have to do is just front load a dart into your scar and just like that, boom, shoot it out. As you'll notice, that was a half-length cut-down waffle head. Pretty good for flywheelers. Not the best. Both the full-length waffle heads and the Accustrikes and the cut-down Accustrikes or waffle heads, anything with a wide head will not go through the scar barrel very well. One of the problems you may come across if you have a scar barrel is you're going to lose power. Depending upon the dart type, whether it's a full-length dart or half-length dart, when you put the scar barrel on, when it hits the scar barrel, you're going to lose anywhere from 5 to 10, maybe even 15 FPS. So if you have this out of the box, no modifications to it, you're going to be hitting 150 with your half-lengths. The second you put this on, it's going to cut it down by 5 or 10 FPS on this particular blaster. At least it did for me. So there is a very inexpensive way to change that. And if you've seen Out of Darts videos on the end cap, you'll already know what I'm about to show you, probably. So, this is your stock end cap. You'll notice that this fits down inside the cap there, okay? The spring itself recesses in it. So if you make a spacer, which I made this spacer out of an old breech from a Recon, but you could just use PVC or CPVC or whatever. This gives it the extra boost that I don't feel like it's too harsh on the internals as far as stressing them, but it definitely more than it takes care of that FPS loss with the scar barrel. Okay. This actually gives it a little bit more of a boost. Even with the scar barrel, I'm usually hitting around 155 with the Pro Darts. And the prime difference isn't all that much. Now, Out of Darts came out with an extended cap that would actually reduce the power of the blaster. Which you may wonder, why would you want to take the power down? I think it lowers it as much as 70 or 75 FPS, which is pretty low. But the reason for that is, if you want to play with friends or family members that don't have some crazy modified blaster, like, that's just not fair. So I get it. With the end cap, you can take it down. He also has an adjustable one, but if you don't have a 3D printer, don't want to wait, the part is out of stock, you're just impatient, you want it right now, all you need is a piece of tubing that you can cut down to fit in there. A couple other things I've done is painted these grips black, and the stock, and the sights. And for that, I just used some matte black, Duplicolor, vinyl, and fabric. Very basic stuff. The lovely thing about this is, though, as you've probably seen in other videos, this is Picatinny underneath here, so you can put any grip on it you like. And my first thought was, I can't wait to replace this until I got it, and I actually really like this grip. And the color, I just didn't like it, so I changed that. Another thing I changed was removing this. I didn't break it or cut it. You just take the screw out. If you don't like it, you can remove it. What I've put in place are these two little pieces. They're actually screw posts. And the reason for that is that I can actually use this to line my sights up. I don't mind this type of sight. I understand a lot of people laugh at it because it's like a grenade launcher sight, but it really does make sense with Nerf or any sort of foam hobby like this, because your shots have that curve to them. You shoot them and there's an arc. So the further away something is, you need to angle your blaster upwards. And if you got accustomed to this, and I feel like if you started off with this, or you just really spent a lot of time with it, which I didn't. I will be the first to admit that I did not spend a lot of time with this, but I just didn't like it. I never used it. I'm so accustomed to either lining up a straight shot or just angling my blaster that I took it off because I just didn't really want it. So the next thing is magazines. So if you've seen other videos, the 18 round stick mag just does not work. Reason for that being, it just doesn't quite make it. Like, it's so close. Even if you look at it here, it's so close. So close, in fact, that it only has to take a hair shaved off of it, and it will lock into place and fire. And I grabbed one of the clear mags that I have sanded down, and one of the ones that I have not. As you can see side by side here, that is how much I had to sand off of it. Not very much. It's a very small amount. Now, you could sand down the shell of the blaster or something, and I thought about doing that. And I understand, in the grand scheme of things, this is a $50 blaster. It's not $199.99 like the first Dart Zone Pro. And it's not $150 like the Dart Zone 1.1. It's not even $75 like the new Ceta that's going to be coming out, I believe, put out by Crossman. That'll be in stores soon. That's $75. This is only $50. I suppose it's not a lot of money, but I don't want to mess with this shell. I just don't. I don't see any reason I would ever want to sand this down or grind this in. I have the skill and the know-how and the ability, not that it's anything special, to be able to fill that in, but I don't want to. And one other thing is the Talon mag, okay? Is that the first time that I went to fire this, it didn't fire. Like, it would fire, but like nothing was coming out of it. And the reason why nothing was coming out of it is because I did not realize that the magazine was not seated all the way. Okay. If you look at this worker mag, you'll notice the catch for the worker mag is way down here. The catch for this blaster is way up here. So the first time I put it in and tried to fire it, I heard it snap into place, and I, tried to fire, and it didn't fire. Because that's all the way in. There's actually 2 notches. And if you've seen other videos, you know this, but geez, if you have a lot of these worker mags, they just slide in so smooth. Almost as if Dart Zone had made this blaster to accommodate the worker mag more so than their own proprietary magazines, which is just crazy, but pretty cool on their part. Like, they didn't have to do that. In fact, most companies don't. Most companies try to make their things as proprietary as possible, or close to as proprietary as possible, which is why you have the Jet Katana mags, the Worker Talon mags, and they have totally different spots for where they catch. And I was worried whenever I'd first heard about this that it would only be compatible with one or the other, and I happen to have a lot of these worker mags, so I was really hoping it was compatible with them. Of course, they are compatible with both, which is amazing. Now, instead of trying to be proprietary and corner their own little piece of the market and try to get you to buy all their stuff, they made something that literally works with all these pre-existing products. And even the ones it doesn't work with, like this 18-round stick mag, only took a little bit of modification to get it to fit into place. That's pretty good for something that only costs $50. When you put $50 in terms of Nerf, what are you going to get? You're going to get the Ultra 1. For the $50 price tag, I was thinking, boy, with like the priming mech and everything, it's going to be cheap, something's going to break. The priming mech is plastic. It doesn't have the steel rails running down like it did on the 1 or the 1.1. But this plastic piece that it has up in here upon disassembly is rather robust. You would have to put an extremely, well, maybe not extremely, you have to put a pretty heavy spring in here, I feel like, to really stress that or break it. And even then, just looking at it, I feel like certain areas that may break, I could probably fix or just replace it with a steel piece. But anyways, that's my worry for them, is that by not making something that breaks down right away, by not making something that's totally going to be obsolete or already obsolete by the time it hits the shelves, by making something that is essentially a prophecy kit fully built in a sense, or like a built-up long shot or whatever, and then offering it at such a low consumer price is great. But it's also, unless some kid just takes this and bashes it, or you really just use this like a club or something, or use it to try and drive like fence posts into the ground, probably not going to have a lot of breakage on these or mechanical failure. I have put thousands of darts through this. I have still not blown the O-ring, and I don't have any problems. I haven't had to take it apart and fix anything. I haven't had to lubricate anything. I haven't had to do anything. I do want to tear it down and check everything and maybe re-grease some stuff, but this stuff came pretty well greased out of the box, to the point that there's still like silicone grease even after all the times I fired it. And all the things I've done, you can still see. Now, if you can see down in there, there is some sort of plastic dust that is getting worn off as I prime this blaster. Maybe on this? I'm not sure. Very strange. Yeah, actually, I think it is. From this orange piece inside here. I'm going to need to put some grease on top of that. Yeah, because that's where that's coming from. But aside from that, that's kind of the only real wear issue that I've noticed on this. I was expecting a lot less for $50. I really was. I've never been more happy as far as blasters go with the money that I spent on this. Totally worth it. 1.1 came out. I saw the $200 price, or sorry, the Dart Zone Pro 1 came out. I saw the $200 price tag and said no. Have I spent that much on a blaster? Yes. Have I ever spent $200 on a fully completed blaster? No, never. The only time I spend that much money is if I put 40, 60, 80 hours of work into the blaster, which to some people will be like, well, why do you want to put that many hours in? Because it's my hobby. It's what I do. Okay? So I don't mind doing that. I don't mind putting a couple $100 into a blaster if I'm building and customizing it. But when I saw the $200 price tag, I just shook my head, because here's what I know. And I'm glad they got to this point. I'm glad they just went for it. I don't even really like Walmart, but I'm glad that Walmart partnered with them to make this happen. Because they can get this on store shelves, and they can get the stuff done. And they can order the volume that brings the price on this down. Okay? A company like Worker making the Prophecy shell, I don't know how much they're making off of that Prophecy shell. Maybe they're making next to nothing. I have no idea. But I do know that unless you're like a company that's mass producing thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of a product, you can't really get it to store shelves as cheaply as if you're doing a small, like, niche thing. Which brings me to my next point. Am I happy if this becomes popular? Maybe. Up to this point, to have a blaster like this, you had to either invest a whole lot of money or a whole lot of time and work, and at least have like some tinkering ability, the ability to build models or do something like that. Some mechanical skill to take it apart, put it back together, build it up, the patience when it doesn't go right to make it right, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of work and effort that goes into it that doesn't, I don't want to say makes it elitist, but makes it a little bit more difficult for the common person. This, for $50, like, you're already into the hobby, essentially. Buy yourself some darts, get a mag carrier, or make one, buy some more magazines. Like, you can go and play at an event. Like, that's it. I hope it doesn't bring in too much of a negative element, but that already exists anyways without it being popular. So I'm hoping that this does become popular. In Australia, they're calling it Dartsoft. They don't call it Nerf. I feel like we should come up with a new name for the hobby that's not nerfing, just because at this point there's so many other 3D printed blasters. There's so many other off-brand blasters. At this point, this is very nice quality. So I don't want to call this off-brand at this point because it's too nice. But there's other brands than Nerf. There's 3D printed stuff. There's homemade stuff. I just made a crossbow out of junk parts. I'll show that in another video. But I do agree with the Aussies in saying that we do need to come up with a new name for this. It's talked about a lot on some various channels, including some US ones like Captain Xavier has been talking about, the fact that we should maybe get away from calling it Nerf. Drac has no longer said Nerf on at the end of his videos. I think he said, I can't remember what he says, but he says something different. Yeah, Make Test Battle is where I always hear them talking about Dartsoft. I don't know if I like the term Dartsoft just because it's a bit too close to Airsoft for me. And I have played Airsoft. I have played paintball. It's kind of expensive to get into, though. Once you get your rig and everything set up, honestly, I'd probably spend less money than I spent on Nerf in the last like 10 years. But so hopefully we will come up with a name for the hobby that won't just be nerfing anymore. I wonder if I could just pressure hold this in place. That kind of works. But yeah, without me rambling anymore, let's go ahead and shoot this thing and have some fun. Alright, I got my target here, my target box set up at 45 feet. I will be aiming for this. And first I'm going to fire off 15 worker darts with no scar barrel. Okay, so I have the scar barrel on, and same test, 15 worker darts at 45 feet. I'm going to see if I can at least hit it once. I didn't hit it once last time. In fact, one of them bounced off the sides. It's part of the inconsistent firing I was talking about. Okay, so you saw I at least had a couple direct hits using the scar barrel with the worker darts. Which is, of course, better than no direct hits. It's a much tighter grouping. Of course, I'm aiming for a target about that is smaller than a baseball overall, which is the entire red thing. The actual yellow dot itself is smaller than a golf ball. So at 50 feet, that's pretty good for a $50 blaster that I put an $8 scar barrel on. Next, let's go ahead and do some worker darts. Or sorry, not worker darts, but waffle heads from Dart Zone without the scar barrel. Okay, so yeah, 10 waffle heads. They will fire, which is cool. 10 waffle heads through a Buzzy mag, no scar barrel. And with the scar barrel, I don't even think all 10 of them will leave the barrel. However, I have noticed the ones that will leave the barrel usually do tend to shoot pretty straight. Okay, so one actually successfully left the barrel and went straight. But out of the other 9, some of them just flopped out of the barrel and literally landed there and just did not make it even to the target. So, as I mentioned before, and if you've used scar barrels, you know this, wide-headed darts like waffles just do not shoot well through them. Okay, now I have 12 cut down waffle heads, no scar barrel. So if you're curious, and you may have cut down waffle heads from your flywheelers running half dart mags, and they work quite well. And this, generally not so much. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's just not good. Okay, now I'm going to do 12 more of the cut down waffle heads with the scar barrel on. See if we can get any of these to actually leave the barrel. Barely. Yeah, whitehead darts, no dice. Okay, scar barrel is on, and I'm going to do some of the Adventure Force Pro darts, the kind that are marketed for the Nexus Pro. Let's see how well it does with those. Ooh. Of course, out of all the darts, those perform the best. Better than the workers, better than the waffle heads. But just for fun, go ahead and throw in the magazine full of the full-length Adventure Force Pro darts with a scar barrel and see how that does. Much better. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to try some FVJs. FVJs look like elite darts. However, their tips are very hard plastic. They're not soft. I wouldn't really recommend them in wars, but just to show you what those will do with a scar barrel. So, not great, but definitely better than elites. The only thing I'll say about the FVJs is a lot of Nerf clubs and communities don't allow it just because they do hurt. I feel like they're very popular, or at least they were at one point in Australia. Okay, I've put the original tip back on because now I'm going to fire some Mega Darts and see if I can hit anything first. I'm going to do the original Megas, the hot dogs. Next, I'm going to do some Buzzy Sticky Darts. Have the suction tip heads on them, but they are the same size as Mega. Well, at least that one made it into the box. So did that one, it flew really straight. Reach load a third one. Whoa, that one went crazy. Now I'm going to do the Nerf Mega Accustrike. See if I can hit anything with that. That one shot really good. That one made it into the box. Ooh, right over it. I haven't actually tried this, but I saw in other videos that you can breech load the rival high impact rounds into the blaster and fire it. So I'm going to try a couple of these, see if I can actually hit anything. Oh yeah, wow. That actually went very straight where I was aiming. Yeah, that one did rather well too. Interesting. So yeah, don't get me wrong, I do like the Scar Barrel, but the stock barrel has a lot of bonuses, like that breech loading of the Mega and the Rival. And as you can see, I can hit stuff at 45 feet, so that's not bad. Okay, so this is my other spacer, and it is about a 1/2 inch. Since it was part of a breech, there was a recessed area right here, and I was able to actually, just by dumb luck, have that fit the spring perfectly, so the spring itself will snap into there, which is quite nice. Just like that. Ugh. The only thing about this that kind of bothers me is the amount of pre-compression that you're generating. And you can, like, this is very solid plastic. Don't get me wrong, it is very solid. It's not, say, quite as solid maybe as some of the different blasters that Nerf has offered, particularly like Rival. But at this point, I am straining the plastic. It's also putting a strain upon the spring. So I generally typically will not ever leave this large of a spacer in here as I store the blaster. Anytime I put something that big, and half the time I'll remove this one too, but I just don't like to leave it in. I feel like it's just compressing the spring and probably most likely gradually weakening it as well. But I'm going to go ahead and throw the Scar Barrel back on here and show you how the accuracy works with this added FPS. But this time I'm not going to aim for my box. I'm actually going to aim for the face on the painting of Bob Marley. Sorry, Bob. But yeah, that's what I'm going to aim for. Gives it an extra about 5 feet and pushes it closer to 50 feet as opposed to 45. Okay, got the Scar Barrel back on, got some Pro Darts loaded up, and I'm going to be aiming, as I said, for the face on Bob. Sorry, Bob, but it does make 50 feet, so give this a little bit more. Alright, so that's all my Pro Darts. I'd say about 70% of them hit, some of them missed. But once I increased the spring without the Scar Barrel, they went a bit more wild, and I am definitely getting tighter groupings. Okay, so after all my repeated firing, I haven't gotten any more of that plastic dust on the tube here. Let me move this over to the side. But it's this piece right here. On the inside, you see all that white on there? That's the white lithium grease I put on it. And since I put that on there, it doesn't feel... Well, I didn't notice anything. I should say it doesn't feel. I shouldn't say that. I didn't feel anything. But like I said, I just noticed the plastic dust. All I can tell this piece does is stabilize your priming grip a little bit. And I think it's on this side because it's mostly been designed for somebody that's right-handed and pumping. Because interestingly enough, this is not on both sides of the shell, just on one side. I say forgot to put it on both sides of mine. I don't know. But like I say, as I use this is getting worn down. The plastic's literally getting shaved and sanded off. So lubricating that definitely helped. Okay, another way I like to run this is with the worker converter. I think it looks pretty cool. Honestly, between the two, I like just a single mag release. This just pressure fits, so whenever you prime the blaster back, you can just pop it right out. And a couple other things I did that I've made for the Scar Barrel. One is just the tip off of a mediator. Sorry, not a mediator, but the tip off of the barrel extension for a modulus recon. I simply sawed it off, did a little filling, painted it black here, which is why I have black paint still stuck on my nails. And this is a nice, pretty much all orange tip with just a little bit of black to break it up. And what I would definitely not use in a public space is this 3D printed barrel that I attached the plunger tube from, I'm not sure what it is, but it's a Busby 4-shot revolver, and had to do a little bit of sanding, but it pressure fits quite nicely and looks pretty cool on this. Gives it kind of a more of a sniper look, as if this is some kind of suppressor. But I don't really run it a lot, just in the house for fun, basically. This making it so much longer makes it harder, of course, to navigate quarters and do things like that in any sort of a tight space. But in closing, do I feel like this is going to be like the one blaster to replace all my other blasters? I mean, no. Like I mentioned earlier, fun is a huge part of Nerf and like this whole hobby. So there's blasters that I have that sure they're not as performance oriented as this, and I have some that in some ways outperform this. Like I have a Accustrike that's modified and shoots at a much higher rate than this ever would, and about 120 feet per second, which is pretty good. Not quite as high as this, but a much faster rate of fire. So depending on the situation, I may not even want to use this. And once again, with 150 FPS, without me getting like a new end cap to lower the FPS, I can't use this in a lot of HVZs. And depending upon my mood, I may just want to like do something fun anyways. Like I have this absurd crossbow right here. It has no real like intense war functionality, but it's fun and it's great for HVZ. I have a melee weapon, which is just a foam wooden stake that I made essentially. It is string powered, just clips in there, load in your darts, and then you can go ahead and fire away. It does not, of course, have a fast rate of fire, and it only shoots around 90 FPS, but that's once again great for things like HVZ. And being with the way that it's painted and such, it does add the elements of roleplay. And I also suspect that in my local campus HVZ, this will not be permitted, because the only orange I have is right here on the deploy light, which does still work. And, I mean, it's not a good light, but the light's just there essentially for fun, like a lot of things in Nerf. So depending upon the situation, like CQB, especially in a shorter span, you know, things like 40 feet and less, you don't really need something this high powered. I would probably just use my modified mediator or my Busby 1902 with the 9 kilogram upgrade spring and the brass in it. Those work great. And the mediator, for example, also has slam fire and can be made very compact, whereas this, you're always kind of stuck with this size. Now, at the same time, like, don't get me wrong, I love the ergonomics of this. Half the time I pick it up forgetting that it's actually a Nerf blaster. I'll pick it up and hold it like this, and I'm like, oh wait, I gotta prime it. This isn't actually a firearm. But, you know, once again, that's also kind of the drawback to taking it outside. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. This is my Nexus Pro. Those are all my thoughts on it. These are the little tiny, simple, easy mods that I've done to it, like I say, that pretty much anybody can do in their house. And yeah, thanks for watching. Get yourself a Nexus Pro. If you have one, you know, please leave it in the comments below what you think about it. And as always, I hope all of you have a great day. Still no busted O-ring.